Today, we're excited to speak with camp industry legend Michael Brandwein about his latest book, The Intentional Camp, Putting More Muscle in the Mission of Character and Youth Development. If you're ready to make your camp more impactful, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast.
This is the Camp Owners Podcast from Go Camp Pro, exploring best practices and issues that professionals in the private camp industry face every day. You can find our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod.
Celebrating 30 years, CampBrain camp management software not only provides a great tool and caring support for your best ever workdays, but a delightful registration experience for parents. Discover what more than 1,800 camps know and how you can love your software too. Visit campbrain.com/ownerspod.
Activity schedules are the backbone of every camper's experience. If there's a staffing change, it's really hard to find a person that knows your camp and the nuance your schedule takes. Come check out Camptivities to learn more about our scheduling tools designed for camps by camp people. Find out more at camptivities.com.
Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We are going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired for them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Hi, everybody. It's Howie Grossinger here, and I'm happy to have you. I am the co-owner and director of Camp Robin Hood, a day camp in the suburbs of Toronto, and Camp Walden, an overnight camp in Ontario, Canada.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Schuna. I am the co-owner and executive director of Hidden Pines Ranch Day Camp, located in Stillwater, Minnesota. If you're looking to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/ownerspod or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this and think, wow, this is absolutely amazing, all my camp people would love to listen to this, please feel free to send them a note to listen. I also want to thank Camp Brain and Camptivities for making this podcast happen, for supporting Howie and I's friendship and podcast so that we get to see each other. We're incredibly grateful.
We sure are. We are back, Kelly. This is an exciting podcast we have for our friends out there today. Are you excited?
I'm always excited. It's like celebrity guest status today. I got all the feels. I'm all ready.
Totally all the feels, and just such a wonderful topic we're going to be talking about today as we gear up for the summer. Our guest today is a return guest. It is the one and only Michael Brandwein. Yay! Michael is here. As many of you know who listen, Michael is one of the most famous names in camp and youth development. He is truly has an international reputation. He has presented in all 50 of the United States and on 6 of the 7 continents of the world. And he goes to individual camps every year to train staff and leadership teams coast to coast. Michael is the #1 national best-selling author in the camp field for books on training and leadership, and he has an amazing brand new book just out in the last couple of months called The Intentional Camp, Putting More Muscle in the Mission of Character and Youth Development. He has presented 3 television programs on developing young people. These have received an Emmy Award, and Michael has served on the National Board of Directors of the American Camp Association. And I have been privileged to call him a dear friend and mentor. Ready for this, Michael? For almost 40 years.
No.
Michael,
Oh, yes, yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
It is. I was a young staff member at Camp Robin Hood when you came to do staff training out of your friendship with my in-laws and made an immediate impression. And we've been friends and chatting ever since. And it's been wonderful. And I just like to say, Kelly, Michael's been an incredible influence on my own career, as he has many other people. So it's very special to have you talking to us, Michael. We are so happy you are here.
And it's an honor. I even know the Canadian spelling. It's Honour.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Way to really, speak to our Canadian listeners.
Yes, I speak fluent Ontarian.
Apparently.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's great to be with both of you. And I'm eager to talk about mission and camp.
We're
Yeah.
happy to have you. I had a question while Howie was introducing you. Do people ever call you the goat of camping, Michael Brandwein? Do you know what that stands for in hipster terms?
Hipster, yeah. My name and hipster are frequently used, Kelly, in the same sentence.
Well, I think
The order sometimes is changes. Sometimes they say, "Oh, there's the hipster, Michael Brandwein," or they say, "There's Michael Brandwein. Wow, what a hipster!"
I
Yeah.
was thinking,
So,
I mean, I that's why I asked because I didn't want to assume, but I really think you could put the goat of camp in your
Totally.
bio in the future. That is the greatest of all time. So
well, that is very kind. I don't know how accurate, but I always tell people I'm not smarter than anyone else. I just have more frequent flyer miles, and I get a chance to see so many different ways of interpreting the word camp. There's so many different ways to do it beautifully and brilliantly. And I just constantly learn and change and grow. It isn't right for any of us, to ask people to grow and to continue to develop if we're not doing that ourselves. So I love that part best, and working with folks like you who do great work and
Mhm.
trying to figure out why it's great work, which really is the subject of this podcast, because
we
I'm
love
Yeah,
that.
I'm
for
afraid we
Well,
don't
sure.
ask that question
I mean,
frequently.
Actually, Kelly, I was thinking as Michael was sharing his thoughts on that, Michael, obviously the resources and and the teaching and the mentoring that he's done for so many camp pros speaks to the fact that he has taken such time to adapt to every era of camp leader and generation of camper in such a significant way. I remember being at a conference, I guess, in New Orleans with him, and I just turned to my wife and I said, like, he's on, Michael's been on his game as much in 2023 or 24 as he was in 1995 when he, some would say, there's no golden era with Michael Brandwein. He adapts, he adopts, and he thinks,
Which you can read in two different ways.
that's
He,
right, exactly.
he's never had a golden area. He had a tin area and aluminum foil era, I think sometime
Right.
between 1990 and 1992, but never golden. But thank
Well,
you. That's
I would say your golden era has crossed many more years than most who have a golden era, is my
well,
point.
thank you.
And
Thank you.
so I think it's a really good point that this learning and growing has such been a hallmark of Michael's stuff. And we'll get on to talking to the book, and we'll end the love fest, and we'll just we'll just go we'll start to talk about the book. Kelly, why don't you kick us off?
I I want to do it, but I do want to, if there is anyone who is new to Michael, I do think it's worthy, like we do with our guests, of giving
Hmm.
them a little bit of the origin story of how
Yeah.
you got into working with camps. And so how you ended up where you are now, Michael. Just a brief origin story of why camp is a love of yours, how you got started with it, just a brief one for anyone who is not familiar with your story.
Sure. Yeah, I actually wrote about it in this last book, the seventh book. I blamed my mother. I was a young magician. I was 10, 11, 12 years old, and at 12 I wanted to do birthday party magic shows, which when you're a crummy magician, that's the only audience you can do, or captive senior citizens in nursing homes. And so I would charge $3 for a show, and I would stand in front of kids. I'd never done that before. Mom was trained as a teacher. That was her degree, and she was a substitute teacher in the schools. And she said, if you want to get good being in front of kids and handling the kids, because I could practice the magic in the privacy of my bedroom and in front of the mirror, but I couldn't practice how you get kids to sit down, be quiet, and be nice to each other and not tear your show apart and come up and grab things off the table. So she said, there's a volunteer program. Go volunteer to be a volunteer camp counselor for kids who are poor and can't afford camp. And I did when I was the summer of my 13th. I was 13 years old. I did it again the next year. I was, as I love to say, North America's least qualified day camp counselor. And that was the start of it. I had been to camp as a camper before that, but I'd never seen myself and pictured myself on the other side of it. So then I got paid jobs as staff. People like you hired me as a counselor. Then I moved into the leadership team. I helped open one of the largest day camps in America on a new site. So I was working in small places and in gigantic places. And that was all just luck. It wasn't anything I did. I was extremely fortunate. And then I was a camp administrator for the YMCA. And that's my origin story. I practiced law for 9 years. I was a trial lawyer in Chicago, and I did all of this part-time. and finally realized in 1987 that this is not what I was designed to do, that I was blessed to be able to do more than one thing. And I decided that I should do the thing that will make the greatest difference in the lives of other people. So I made partner and left the firm. My parents were thrilled, and I went into teaching. I went into helping to support people and teach them things that I had worked up over the years and continue to work up that will help them make great differences in kids.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So
Thanks
people
for
know.
asking.
Yeah.
You can cut all that out now.
Nope. Sorry.
Well, cut out the
No,
love
no.
fest stuff. Cut out, who cares where Brandwein got to start, and say, welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast. Our guest is Michael Brandwein. He has a new book out. It's called The Intentional Camp. That was not the original title. Then Kelly says, what was the original title? And Howie says, yes, I'd like to hear that. And then
Love to hear
Michael
that.
says,
Yes, please.
it was the original title was The History of Balloon Animals in the 16th Century. And that was voted down. And so instead I called it The Intentional Camp. And see, now we're right where we should be.
Great. Okay. Well, great segue. Great segue. Tell us about this book. Tell us about this book, Michael. The Intentional Camp.
It comes from magic. You know, sometimes, ironically, since I mentioned that that was one of the reasons I started working with kids, you know how people will say camp is magic?
Yeah.
Or they'll use the phrase the magic of camp. When people run conferences, you got to have a theme. It doesn't really make any difference. It just gives you something to decorate the tables with. And the magic of camp is one of the great themes. You know, you can have wands and stars and all of that sort of stuff. And it's a phrase that we use because camp is unique. It's very difficult to describe. So we use this word magic. No one is more happy than I am that we use the word magic because of my lifelong passion with it. I still perform professionally as a magician. I'm glad that magic is used. But if I do a card trick for you and you take a card out of the deck and sign it with a black Sharpie and you get your choice, the deck is just on your lap, you do it. And then it's put back in and your eyes never leave my hands and your signed card ends up in my empty right pocket. You don't say, oh my goodness, Michael should be burned at the stake. Michael has spiritual powers. What you do as intelligent people is the same thing I do as intelligent people. We say a 5-word question, which is, how did you do it? When we see magicians, if they float someone, if they cut them in half, we always know what question to ask because we know it's not real. And so I just wish we asked, how did he do that? How did she do that? How did they do it? More often about camp. So I think that it's great to call camp magic, and I think it's not great because what it does is it makes us buy in, and I think inaccurately, to the fact that the great benefits that camp can have are somewhat, unexplainable, or that they're, worse than that they're automatic. That's why on our websites we have, you'll make friends for a lifetime. No, you won't. You might, but you might not. It's not guaranteed because it's a camp. So the reason I call it an intentional camp is because I started to think about, I coined this term, the intentional camp, decades ago. And I'm really pleased and proud that it's caught on. And you'll see in people's titles of what they speak about or in other things, people use the word intentional all the time now. I'm delighted. It's a better word than magical, because what I'd like to do is to quote a chapter title from the book. I'd like to go from magic to methodical. What I'd like to do is to acknowledge, yeah, camp is magic. Now forget that. If we really do help kids develop lifelong friendships, how do we do that? Because when we know the answer to that, then we can be more purposeful, let's say intentional, and do it all the time. If we say that we raise kids' confidence or we develop self-esteem, well, that doesn't happen automatically. So that's the reason I call it the intentional camp. And what the book outlines are 4 steps. Because if this isn't simple, nobody's going to do it. Everybody's too busy. Everybody feels too much stress. So my job is to simplify it, to make it absolutely accessible for people to do. And so there's 4 steps, and I define an intentional camp as a camp that is driven by the answer to 2 questions. The first question is just 4 words. Why are we here? That's the mission question. So an intentional camp is one that's driven by the answer to that question. What's your core mission? And then the next question, the last one, is what I call the IQ. The IQ is what I call the intention question. And I deliberately coined it as IQ because that's a measurement some people use to measure smartness. It's not the only way, of course. There's many different intelligences we now know. But the IQ is a smart thing for camps to ask. And it's the most simple thing because, again, people won't use it otherwise. What you do is you walk around camp and you ask every hour the IQ question, which is, how can we use this activity or moment to accomplish the mission? And then it's circular. What was the mission? Go back to the answer to the first question. And then you're done. Except we're never done. This is not something you transform, like you go from this to that. It's a gradual process Howie, that we do from time to time, year after year, and we get better at finding new ways to accomplish the mission. But the first step is and in fact, the first step of the 4 steps is to refresh and refine the mission. And that's something that, because we're busy, it's hard to get people to do. So the first thing I try to accomplish in a book is to make that easy for people. What questions do you sit down over a pizza with your leadership team to be sure that this year we're refreshing and refining the answer to the question, what are we doing here? And so that's a broad outline of what it is. And the book is packed with ways of doing that. So in other words, I walk around at camp and go to many different activity areas, from arts and crafts, or as I like to call it, smarts and crafts at an intentional camp, to a climbing wall, to the swimming pool, to the lake, to the dining hall, or to the out picnic grove where we eat. You go to each one of those places. And in order to jumpstart people, I just wanted to give them a book where they could hand this to a leadership team member and open it to any page and say, why don't we do this thing at lunch? We could do this every day. Why don't we raise a flag at our camp every day? Why don't we raise the flag this way? Because if we do it, we produce astonishingly deep results and changes in people. But the folks, our dear friends who listen to this podcast, you're all too busy. I always joke and tell people I'm a consultant. I'm lonely. Let me do it for you.
I think that's one of the best things about when I come to hear you speak, Michael, is I can just take it and turn it around and use it at camp. And even now, even just hearing you speak, I wrote down like your 2 questions. I was thinking while you were talking of one, I think it'd be really interesting on your kickoff day of training, if you have staff answer, why are you here? And then why are we here? And then you do it on the last day of training. Like, what have you learned through the intentionality of staff training about, like, has that answer changed? Has it evolved? Is it different? And then also when you're going around to different areas, like you're training at archery, we sometimes walk up and we're like, all right, what could be the safety risks or what do we need to be aware of? But I think at the end of that, you could also ask, not only during the summer, but during training, of what can we do here to further our mission? I love that.
Well, you're absolutely right. I want to note that you said, at the beginning of training, we want staff to answer that. I would like, this is just my opinion, I want to answer that now. I want our leadership team to decide, yeah, this is it. This is how we're going to word it. This is not a mission statement in the sense that it's boring and it goes, forget that. Okay. You operate your own camp. This is a business you own. You don't need to, just answer the question, why are you running camp? What's the core purpose you have? And I'm not here to tell you what it should be, although if you ask me, I'll give you my opinion about the greatest strength of camp and how we can do it. But it's not Michael Brandwein's idea of the mission. But once you know that, the first thing I tell people to do in staff training is to, in a creative, exciting, concise way, hammer that with every one of your staff. That is your opening. If you want to say good morning to them, I'll allow that. If you want to say welcome, it's glad to see you, fine. But your third sentence has got to lead into a 5 or 10 minute demonstration of the answer to what are we doing here? Because I believe if people don't know their job description, how in the heck can we expect them to provide maximum performance? How can we deliver on the promises to parents and on the promises that we've made to them? The book is crammed full. Actually, there are openings in most of my books. And in this new book, The Intentional Camp, has a bunch of ways that you can do that. You don't have time to make these up yourself. Can I give you my favorite one now? Can I just describe it?
Please. Yes.
Because people shouldn't have to buy a book. It's always awkward for me. I footnote myself, but I don't want anything ever to be like an infomercial.
Every year, it's the same thing. Lots of hours spent working on the daily schedules, only for there to be mistakes, missed activities, and lots of stress. Why is it so difficult? There's got to be a better way. And there is Camptivities, an activity scheduler made specifically for camps. Group scheduling or camper scheduling, we've got you covered. Different day schedules, no problem. Auto scheduling, elective scheduling, batch scheduling, schedule the way that works for your camp. With over 60 reports, you'll be able to see the data easily. Now's the time to implement a better way to schedule. Go to camptivities.com and set up a time to chat. Make activity scheduling easier, less stressful, and more efficient. We'd love to show you the next big thing in camp, so don't wait. Start the onboarding process now when you have the time. Let us help you get away from your desk and back out in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat.
Do you love your camp management software? This is what Sarah from Tom Sawyer Camp says about her solution. We love everything about Camp Brain. The software has helped us improve all of our systems when it comes to running our camp programs. From online registration to communicating with our families to billing and running payments, the list goes on and on. We are customers for life. Celebrating 30 years dedicated to complete camp management, Camp Brain not only provides a great tool in caring support for your best ever work days, but a delightful registration experience for parents. They're continually refining their solution to deliver exactly what camp owners need now and will next. From SMS texting to integrated payment solutions and more. Discover what more than 1,800 camps know and how you can love your software too. Visit campbrain.com/ownerspot.
Look, this is the way you can do it. Kelly walks out and says, welcome, gives the mandatory federally required excited sentence. We're excited to see you all. And then says in the third sentence, we're going to be answering lots of your questions as we begin training. But the most important question that we ask, dramatic pause, is the answer to this question. And then Kelly, you go to a flip chart and you just write WAWH and you say, why are we here? This is the mission question. Why we're going to be working hard and we're going to be having fun, but what's all this work for? Now, this is a very important announcement. So what we're going to have to do is we should signify this some way. So we need a big gong. We need a big bell. A gong is a big bell. And then what you do is you say, does anyone have the gong? Howie walks in and says, we don't have the gong. The gong is gone. We tried to get a gong. And in fact, in the book, I wrote a little skit, that's 30 seconds. That's very funny. You don't have to write the skit and you can read it right off the piece of paper. The staff will laugh. Remember, these are the first minutes of training. They're expecting a boring, they know the first part is 3 hours. There's nothing boring here. And especially not now. All you do is you say, this is camp, we can make stuff up. So Howie, let's go get a gong. And Howie and Kelly go, they grab 3 people who are very purposely picked. These are a brand new staff person. They are a veteran staff person who would ordinarily sit in the back and just jabber through the whole thing. And is sitting there saying, I've already been trained, as if that's something you just do once. And then you get your new assistant pool or waterfront director, or your riding instructor, who's in a new position this year. And you bring them all up, you introduce them in 5 seconds, and they form like a hoop with their hands. So it's like a big circle. They hold hands. Imagine like 3 people trying to make a table with their hands, and then they just switch it vertically. So it's like a disc, a gong. And then Howie takes a big tube of paper that's about 3 feet long, and that's the mallet. Kelly, you have your whole staff make a gong sound, and there's some fun, of course, as they take 30 seconds to figure out what a gong sounds like. I would have them turn to a partner and create their own gong sound, and then everyone does it. Howie smashes the invisible gong with the mallet. We do it again. The mallet vibrates in his hand. By the way, stop here, freeze frame, and look at your staff. No one's looking out the window. No one's talking to their best friend from last summer. They're going, what the heck is this? And it's fun, and people are laughing. And then you take that scroll, that mallet that Howie brought out, and you unroll it across the whole front of the room. And on it is the answer to, why are we here? Now, this allows me to say, if it were my mallet, if I wrote it, what I would say, and I'm capitalizing and bolding I and underlining it, this is just your friend Michael talking. But what I would say is the mission of camp is this, and on it, it would say, We use camp to build great qualities in young people. By the way, if we serve adults, and some camps do, you could say people. We build great qualities in people. And now you're off to the races, as the expression goes. That's the reason we're here. Immediately after this, Kelly, I would jump into 1 or 2 games that staff can play with kids every day that accomplish that mission. Because otherwise it's abstract and it's like a college class or a high school class. They should immediately see, well, but what does it mean build great qualities? So what I do is I say to them, grab a pen and a paper, and they always have that. And if you want to know why, ask me or read any of my books. They got to have pen and paper, and just say, write down the initials of your best friend. Okay. And now take 30 or 45 seconds to write down great qualities they have. I'll give you an example. They're kind, right? Write that down. Okay. You wouldn't be best friends with someone who wasn't kind. What else? They've always got your back. Write that down. In fact, write down dependable. Okay. So now staff have gone from watching this very funny, bizarro skit, and they like working here already. And now you've got them actively involved, thinking, every one of them with a pen for just 45 seconds, and they decide what are good qualities. This is essential if that's the business of camp. So they got to know what good qualities are. And then you say, what you just wrote down is what we want our campers to grow up like. And now what we have to do is spend the rest of training figuring out what can we do every hour of every day at every one of our activities to grow the things that you say you admire in your friends.
And there you have it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. And that's less than 10 minutes. And it's probably different than most orientations. I don't use the word orientation. I think orientation is way too low of a bar. Orientation, when people use that word, is like something like, orienting yourself and going around and knowing where everything is and what we're supposed to. It should be more exciting. I like the term leadership launch or leadership academy, or something that makes people excited and realizes that we're here to learn stuff that will help us do a fantastic job that changes people.
First of all, thank you on behalf of all the listeners, because my encouragement to them is to really dig into this. I know, Michael, I've told you this in the past. Kelly, I have humored my own family with all my prep for some of these launches that I've done over the last several years. And, if I named a few of Michael's openers over the years, I feel like a mini magician myself over the years because I've practiced to deliver this. But I can speak, and I'm sure there are people who are longtime followers of Michael's work and have sat in conferences and taken home the sheets. And my hope is that everyone is digging into this, because I know it's been a big part of what I'd like to think is some of the success I've had to get everybody on the same page right from the get-go. And I think we all see the value in that. And Michael, I was just thinking a little bit about, you know, I want to dig in a little bit about the value of using returning and new staff as part of, this kind of introduction to mission, because, you said something that I want to dig into is many of us are benefiting from healthy return rates of staff, I'd like to think, and some of them can just dig into the same old thing. You made a particular point of talking about using people from every level of experience through these sessions. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, just the value of that a little bit, and some of the prep that goes into that, perhaps even just doing this kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to. In the new book, I define my term purposeful picking. And purposeful picking simply means that we want to get people up in front during our training as often as possible, but they should be purposely picked. And what that means is thinking about the folks who would most benefit from being up there. That's why when I know I'm going to do a demonstration and 3 people are going to be up there, that I purposefully pick those people from groups that I think will benefit from that. I love bringing people up all the time, even if they just hold a card. They don't have to say anything. They just hold for Kelly. A good example of that is I suggested writing WAWH on a flip chart. One of the ways I do it is I just have 4 bright yellow poster cards, and you get 4 people up and they hold up the cards. They turn out, of course, to be in the wrong order. And then you laugh and say, excuse me, and then you rearrange them in the correct order. On the back side of them are the words, why are we here? Now, why do I do that? Well, answer A, you got to feed the eyes. Visuals help people pay attention and it makes things stick in the brain. The second reason is I get 4 staff people up there. And these are 4 people who don't have to do anything. All they have to do is just stand there. I may not even tell them that they're going to do this in advance, or you can. But for example, all of you are hiring staff this year, some of whom seem kind of quiet, but you know that they're going to be gangbusters with your staff, with your kids. You just know that. They may or may not be effusive and extroverted during training and going up to people and say, "Can I sit with you at lunch?" I was one of those staff people. I didn't know where to sit at lunch. And I was shy and quiet, and actually still am today. So that was the kind of staff person I am. But if you bring me up in front and give me success being part of that 15-second communication of the most important question we ever ask, which is why are we here? That's purposeful picking.
Everything's just so darn intentional, Michael. I love it. I love it, love
Well,
it, love
thank
it.
you. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is. And the level of in the sense that the level of detail will hurt your head. Okay. So imagine they're holding WAWH. So when they come up, and you point to them, you have everyone give them a round of applause. Now, they're only halfway there. They haven't seen these cards yet. So you pick 4 people out. So these are, my Brandweinian world is just all details. It's just all details. So for example, when they get halfway up to the front of the room, you say, let's give them a round of applause, because you've seen people do that on TV and shows. So they start walking up to the front and you just say, oh, wait, stop, please. Does anyone know why we're applauding?
Yeah.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
you stop and you say, we're applauding because leaders step up and do more than is required. So while all of us get to sit comfortably in our seats, now 4 people are going to come up, and this is a less comfortable place. They don't know yet that those 4 people standing next to me are the safest people on the planet right now. Because if anyone looked at them sideways or made fun of them in any way, I'm on them, just like you will be with your campers. So let's give them more applause now, but let's remember why we're applauding, because they're stepping up. Leaders do more than they're asked. They beyond the call of duty. So now, even before the demonstration,
I know
you've made an incredible point. By the way, what do the 2 of you think is going to happen the next time you ask for volunteers to come up, right? And here's another cool thing. Yes, you're right. You're raising your hand. The other cool thing is, here's another bet. What do you think the group, the audience, is going to do when they volunteer and they come up? Okay. The whole audience will applaud. That's right. Yeah, Kelly's applauding. That's exactly right. You don't tell them to do any of those. So imagine this is 5 minutes. This is less than 5 minutes into your training, and look what you just accomplished. This is even before the big gong. The gong hasn't even come out yet, but we're telling them, why are we here? So now you hand out the yellow poster cards to them, and they're deliberately in the wrong order, so that they say WAWH. We fix that. We line them up. Then they turn the cards over, and you, on purpose, as a detail, wrote the wrong word on the back of each card. So on the back of the H card, it says not here, but it says why. And so when they turn them around, the message is completely nonsense. So then you stop, and then you say, whoops. By the way, staff, did you know whoops is one of the most important sounds we can make in front of our campers? But at camp, what we do is something that I call focus on the fixing. So yeah, it's a mistake, but we can fix it fast. Staff, would everyone repeat after me? Focus on the fixing. All right, let's say it one more time. Focus on the fixing. That's how we solve problems at camp. We don't complain and whine that there's a problem. We get right to figuring out what are our options. Well, in this case, let's look at the cards and let's change them. And so now you put them in the correct order. You still haven't done the demonstration yet. So what I always tell people is, you don't need to go to that level of detail. I put them in my books, and I put them in a way and in bulleted fashion so that you can skim that part and you can just do the main activity. Or if you want, you can add a couple of these delicious details in there as well. It's entirely up to you. I know people are busy, but I like to provide them with a quick and easy script that not only you can do, but you can hand to somebody else and ask them to do, because that kind of delegating is very important as well.
I like so much, Michael, that you are doing so much showing and doing versus telling. Like that's something that we've really been focusing on last year and this year, is how do we show and do? And I know you talk about that muscle memory of how can we do and show versus just tell. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
so easy to get into that mode of, we're intentional here, and it's important to get up in front and put yourself out there, and it's important to admit when you're wrong. And it's so easy to just say that, but I love so much
Yeah.
you're doing and
My
showing.
Yeah, my first training book was called Training Terrific Staff, and I explained my TNT principle. TNT is talking's not teaching. And what I tell people is we have to explode that notion. When we stand up in front of people for a half an hour and go over policies and procedures, and then we say, all right, now we've covered this. Covered is one of the worst words in education and training.
Mhm.
Well, you covered with what? A shroud? Or sometimes people will say, all right, now we've gone over our procedures for whatever. Gone over what? Their head? I admit that my tongue is in cheek and I'm deliberately being sarcastic here, but it's
Sure.
because just standing up in front of people and saying this stuff doesn't mean that they've got anything. It's why they're there. It's why they're fidgeting in their seats. It's why they want to know when lunch is or when the next break is. But again, people are very busy. How do you construct trainings to move segment after segment in this inexorable, energetic way that gets people to immediately practice stuff? That's my job. My job, and it's the reason, that I decided to do this full time. My job is to just give that to you. The Skill of the Day book that I wrote has 25 things you want to teach your staff. And there's 25 lesson plans, one for each one of those skills. So if you want them to be better listeners to kids, especially when they're expressing hard feelings, you just go to chapter such and such, and that's how you present it in training. Here's a skit, here's a poster you hold up, here's a handout, here's an activity, here's a game, and you just pick any of those. We need cookbooks to just pull out, and every camp's needs will be different. And that's the way we can help people get this done. Your podcast is an excellent example of that too. People can ride the exercise bike and get all kinds of great ideas that they can use. So thank you for doing that. It's a wonderful
Yeah.
way for people to figure out new ways that they can accomplish the mission.
Michael, there's no replacing when you have all your staff in one setting where you can do a lot of these things. But we in the industry have also been talking about the value and the importance and the need to onboard our staff before we're all together in ways that keep them interested, motivated, and continually excited about what they're about to take on, the leadership that they'll develop in themselves, but also the experience they're going to be giving the kids. Maybe you could speak to some of the things you've been thinking about, perhaps, of how we can communicate the intentional camp philosophy or the fact that we are an intentional camp in the weeks, months prior to all of us actually being together for hands-on training and thinking about, I think we're at a time in the year where so many of us are communicating with our staff, getting them excited. But I feel like in hearing all of this, there is also an opportunity to introduce them to some of these things in a way that at least gets them excited that they're part of something that isn't, as you've said in the part, we're not just describing this experience as fun. We're actually, this is we're here to do work and we're here to help kids grow, as you've said, in the past and continue to say. Any thoughts on that piece about prior to all of us being together?
I'm smiling because you say any thoughts. I have
Oh
thoughts about
yeah,
everything, whether I
I know.
whether I know what I'm
I
talking
caught
about or not.
myself. I caught
That's right,
myself.
right. Any thoughts on turf grass management? Yes, Howie. There's a couple of steps that you can take. None of these are based on any actual knowledge. Yes, of course. Just yell stop when you've had enough. Number one, when you interview staff, please talk to them about mission. Please explain to them that why we're here. So, for example, the way I would do it is, and you can do this on Zoom if you want, but what you say to them in this circumstance is to say, at our camp, we have incredible amount of fun. But then, I ask people to quote me, fun is not the mission. Fun is what it feels like as we accomplish the mission. If camp isn't fun, we're all out of business. There's no podcast. And that's what's important, the fact that there's no podcast. But fun is not the reason we're here. Fun describes the atmosphere in which we do things that can change people every day for the rest of their life. We change what kind of human beings they are by giving them what I call character qualities like kindness and respect and responsibility. So how do you communicate that in an interview? What I would do, for example, is to teach them, is to say, for example, we play rock, paper, scissors at our camp. You may know how to play that, and then you just play that for 15 seconds with the person on Zoom or in your office. And then say, at our camp, we don't play it that way. Our friend Michael Brandwein taught us psychic rock, paper, scissors. And the way we play it is you only win if you're the same. This game is described in the Intentional Camp book. So when you do scissors and they do scissors, you say we're going to high five or air five to our screens and say psychic as if we read each other's mind. But if we're different, if Howie, you do scissors and I do paper, you're going to shout, try again, both of us. The words try again are the two words that are important to develop persistence. And so what you would do is play that game for 30 seconds with your candidate and then say, why do we play this game this way? It's because we want kids to not just play a game, we want them to learn persistence. We start in the interview by saying that there's a reason for all of the stuff we do. We're not just a fun, safe place for kids to learn how to play soccer or volleyball, just how we pick a random sport. If you don't know, everyone, Howie is a world expert on and honored coach in volleyball. See, I can do the love fest too, Howie.
Yes.
That's right.
Thank you.
And Kelly is an astronaut, which he never mentions
Yes,
to
she
anyone.
is. Never talks about it.
How easy is that? So in the interview, there's ways of letting them know right now. Another thing you can do in the interview is you can say, tell me about your best friend. What qualities do they have? And the purpose of our camp, the why are we here, is to develop those qualities. Kelly, that was the thing I suggested you can do right in the beginning of training. I strongly suggested it's 90 seconds. I wouldn't start training without it. That's really easy. It doesn't cost any money. Piece of cake. Okay, now Howie's asking about the weeks before camp. What do we actually do? I strongly suggest that you assign every one of those people a PAL. PAL, PAL is what I call Partners Accelerate Learning. And what you do is you buddy them up, you partner them up, and you tell them that on the first morning of training, they're going to sit with that person. But what you want them to do now is to reach out, communicate to their PAL, and ask them 3 questions of yours, and then 2 questions of their own. Ask them the 5 questions, collect the answers to the 5 questions, and then send them back to camp. You can do this through a Google's Doc or something like that. It's not a big logistic thing. But when you send them back, you get entered into a contest for fabulous prizes. Fabulous has an asterisk by it because fabulous at camp is different than anywhere else in the world. It may be a rubber chicken. That would be one of the more fabulous prizes. What are the 3 questions? Well, one of them can be, did you ever go to camp? Which is a bad question because that's yes or no. A better question would be, did you ever have somebody in your family who really you think made you in part the person who you are today? Who was it and what did they do? That's a great question that's mission directed. What you do is you collect those information, they interview with each other, and you say to them, before camp starts, the reason we want you to interview people is not a get to know you. The reason is because we want to practice asking people questions to show interest in them because that's how people make friends. So we're going to be doing that at camp all the time. Our website says that kids will make friends for a lifetime, but the reason that they'll make friends is because we teach them how. And one of the ways is to ask people questions. How was your day? What did you think of arts and crafts today? And we're going to get them better at that on Friday than the prior Monday, and that's how they're going to make friends. So that's another thing that you can do to get them started to think about. And please note, you're actually getting them to practice how to accomplish the mission. And you're not subtle about it. You're saying, this is why we're having you do this. It's not just so you have somebody to sit with the first day of training. So those are 2 examples. There are many others, but that's one of the ways that we can get people to start thinking about why they're there and the kind of skills we'll need to practice to be able to accomplish this once our children arrive.
Thank you for that. That was great. Yeah, it would be really cool to have those connections among staff early, which is so wonderful.
Well,
Kelly,
and not only, I just want to slip in one more thing. When you start talking, when Kelly goes up in front of them and starts with this gong stuff, watch them. When they're seated with a person who isn't their best friend because you assigned them their partner. And Howie, this goes back to your question about purposeful picking. Purposefully pick this. Put a veteran with somebody who's not a veteran, maybe. Put that quiet person, Brandwein, who you hired, who you're going to bet on, he's going to be okay, but he is kind of quiet. I'm not sure. In fact, I'm going to put him with the youngest campers because I don't think he's going to hurt them. They like the quiet ones. That's what we all do. We'll put the quiet, really gentle ones with the younger ones. Put Brandwein down there. But what you can do is you can assign them to these specific people. And then when they're sitting there in the group, they're not all giggling and talking to each other because they're sitting next to somebody who you assigned them to sit with.
Mhm.
For years, I said, would everyone please stand up, find somebody who is not your best friend here and sit with them. Of course, I
Yeah.
was smart enough to do that. Do they do it? Some yes, some no. The ones who don't do it are the ones you want to be sure that they're sitting next to. So have them sit with their pal. Partners
Mm.
accelerate learning.
Yeah.
Sorry
A
for
modific
interrupting.
no, that's no, thank you for that. A modification of that we've tried under sort of this influence is as part of our opening get together of staff training, we have the returning staff sit every other chair or every other spot, and then we bring in the new staff separately. So returning staff come in first and lots of music, standing ovation for the new people, and they have to find a seat between two returning people, so they're paired up with someone who they
Cool,
normally wouldn't have gravitated to. It's been a modification of some of
cool.
this stuff, and we have found it to be, very, very helpful. And it's been just a feature of again, largely because returning staff gravitate to each other, the apprehension of a new person, and we use that as a springboard to getting these relationships and these questions answered that you've just described. So that has been
Yeah.
something that some people may want to try as well.
It's marvelous. The benefit to having them meet each other before, just online, with just a
Hmm.
few questions, is that then when I sit down with this person, I, the Michael who's quiet, shy, and a little on the terrified side and have never worked at camp, it's really hard for me to sit next to Kelly. I don't know Kelly. It's really hard for me. So I'm just, voicing for those folks. So what you're doing is marvelous. You can add the detail
Sure.
of having them sit with somebody who, maybe is a returning person. That's brilliant, Howie, of course, because that somebody can set up to be a mentor. But now they're sitting with somebody they know. When they show up at camp, their first job that first morning is to find their pal. And we make it
Mm.
easy for them. Those of you who have really large camps, let's say you have 200 staff, some camps have more or 150 staff. There's zones. So when I show up the first day, I have on my name tag a blue dot, and that blue dot means I go to somebody who's holding up a big blue dot. And that's where my pal is going to go too, because my pal is a blue dot. So I'm really only looking for my pal among maybe 30 people. It's a piece
Yeah.
of cake for me to find my pal.
Yep.
And for those of you who have them sign in, if that's the case, that makes it easier for people, not to be standing in a long, unwelcome line of people. It's much easier to do that.
Kelly, thoughts?
Always thoughts. So many ideas. I like the having them sit with that person right away the first day. We had them sit in communities that we assigned prior, and the community person reaches out, but we haven't done the direct one-to-one buddy. And I like that a lot. And I like the interviewing each other prior to camp, because those questions are important. And then, I mean, lucrative prizes. They would turn in their name and they could
No,
win a
no, no,
lucrative
excuse me.
prize.
I'm interrupting, my friend. I didn't say lucrative. I said camp fabulous prizes. Fabulous prizes are like a little keychain with no key on it. And I don't know
Yes.
how lucrative it is.
Well, I added that. My friend, I have a good friend
Yes.
who works at 3M, and if he always has like different games, and he calls them lucrative prizes, but they're
Ah,
often like 3M Post-its. So
Yeah.
oh, well,
we
there you
say
go.
lucrative, but that
Yes, I
could mean
love that.
anything. But I
I'm
like
gonna,
that you're
yeah.
clarifying.
No, I'm gonna
Yeah.
start using that. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that
We,
very much.
we say prizes of unbelievable value. It's very subjective.
Yeah. Now, Ken, I have a question for the two of you. Why do you think that people don't take those steps in addition to just being really busy and it's a challenge? Why do you think that is? What prevents people? What are the obstacles to actually going and thinking about our different activity areas in that way?
I
Me,
Go ahead, Howie.
the process of going through the PAL exercise,
No,
is that
no,
what?
no,
No.
no, no. I mean, let me give you an example. Do you do tie dyeing at your camp ever?
Yes.
Tie-dye shirts and things like that? All right, you're
Sure.
both saying yes. Please forgive me if at your camp for our listeners, if that's not what you do. I just had to pick an example, and I'm deliberately picking a common one, but you may not do that, okay? At many camps, the tie-dyeing is done like a fun factory. This is not
Yeah.
bad. But what you do is you show up, your brilliant arts and crafts people have laid out all of the stuff, and it's a conveyor belt. The campers come in, they're handed their white shirt, they are pointed, they're given directions, you move them through, those shirts are hung up to dry, and you move them out. It's a great activity for any kind of camp, and you're done. I would never criticize that. I challenge people to say, if our core mission is to build qualities in people and change the way they are as people, what could you do there that would be mission related? This is the IQ question. IQ, the question is, what can I do with this activity in this hour to build great qualities? So that's today's, podcast challenge question. Now, I'll answer it myself because why should you have to work? In the book, I explained that one of the ways you can do that is to ask your arts and crafts people, could we talk for 5 minutes before camp starts about how we set up for each of your terrific activities? Because you guys are so organized that what you do is when they're making friendship bracelets, when I bring my group up for friendship bracelets, or when kids select that, at resident camp, they come walking over, that's what they're going to do this morning. All of the beads are, color coordinated. They're on the picnic table. All of these things are here. Everything is labeled. I'm not suggesting that's wrong. That's a product of how good and organized you are. Here's a what if question. How would you feel about having the kids come up, but not having all of the materials out there? And part of the first thing they have to do is to get the materials and bring them to the table so that everyone can share them and use them. So in other words, what if you had a couple things, maybe scissors are there or something like that, or maybe but what if the cord that they're going to string the beads on, what if the beads themselves, what if they walked in and you said, I'm going to ask some people to help set us up. We're going to do an incredible project. There's going to be lots of fun, but let's take 3 minutes and get ready for it, because that's what responsible people do. They ask, what do we need? And let's get it, in a place where everyone can use it. I threw the word responsible in there. Okay. And then you pick 3 people. All the kids will want to do it. You just smile at them and you just say to them, oh, every time you're here, we're going to have different people do this. We want everyone to practice this. You just cut right through that. And then you get 3 people. The beads are in the corner. Please go see Tanisha. She's going to show you where the scissors are, and you can bring those to the table. What if, as part of every arts and crafts thing, they had to bring something to the table? If so, pardon the metaphor, what they're bringing to the table is learning to be responsible. They're learning, this is for parents whose kids don't clean their room, or who don't, when they're going to grandma's for the weekend, they don't lay out their clothes. They're an 8th grader and someone else lays out their clothes. This is the difference camp can make. This is what we can do. I don't think this is something owners should do by themselves. I think we should compliment our people who run crafts and say, I read this book, or I've been thinking, or I went for a walk, or I listened to this podcast. How would you feel about taking what we do and moving it, with this extra dimension? I'll tell you right away, people say, well, then there won't be enough time for the tie-dye. There won't be enough time for this. There won't be enough time. And isn't that telling? Because that means that the reason you're doing it is what? For the friendship bracelets. Okay. What I say is, wouldn't it be great? And the answer is yes, we can do this. We can absolutely do this. Wouldn't it be great if, while we did friendship bracelets, we did things that helped kids learn how to make friends that they could give the bracelets to?
Mhm. Yeah, I was
Yep.
going to say, to answer your question, Michael, it's time. It's time. And I think it's getting something done versus the process. And like you said, I think there's so much value in what's a part of that process of getting it ready, and that responsibility of taking it out, putting it away, and ignoring, not telling to accept, to ignore, but don't worry about it has to be done or perfect, or the tie-dye has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And why are they putting it away?
Hmm.
Well, I think they think
Yeah.
it makes their job easier, but I think it makes their job harder when they do all of
Right.
that prep
Right.
and after for the children.
Yes. And what we need to do is to take a step back, a loving step, be kind to ourselves, and say, we use the word job in that sentence. What is the job? Okay, it makes the job easier. But what is the job? Is the job to be a craft, school, a thing? I'm never, ever saying that we shouldn't do that stuff. That's the fun of camp. Archery is the fun of camp. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't really take time to talk to the archery people and say, when you're doing archery, what you can do is have the kids all shout out before we do it a couple of positive statements that a person can make to themselves when they're about to do something that's hard. Kids, one of them is I can do it. Can you think of any others? Now, of course, my tone and the simplicity of this will be affected whether these are 13-year-olds or whether they're 8-year-olds or 6-year-olds. But what you do, and this takes 60 seconds, is you come up with 3, 4, or 5 things that positive people say to themselves when they're about to do something that's hard. And all you do, the only change you make to archery is when little Michael comes up and he starts to arch, a verb that I proudly made up. When I
Right.
start to arch, what I do is I turn to the counselor there, and the counselor smiles and she says, Michael, what are you going to say to yourself? And I said, not out loud, but in your head, that's positive. I'm going to say, I can do better than last time. Great. That's what positive people say. Okay, go ahead. And now they back away and they shoot and they knock out the balloons just like they were doing before. But what we've done is add to archery the skill of self-talk. Self-talk is one of the most important things you can develop in a human being. And one of the qualities I want to use camp to build in kids, you don't have to agree with this, is positivity. And one of the things that a positive person does is when they're faced with a challenge or when they're doing something new, they say positive statements to themselves. So if you right now asked your, sports people or your climbing people or any of those people, could you think of 4 or 5 phrases? Here's a couple of examples. And we're thinking of incorporating that and asking kids to say that to themselves before they do this and using the word positivity. It doesn't take time to do that. You're going to talk to them about what supplies they need anyways. And I think that it isn't as hard as we make it. It isn't as time consuming as we make it, but it does require asking, but what is the job? What is the purpose of this? And is that a scarier question? Of course. But are we an average camp? I tell you, when I train your staff, I say at our camp, average is the enemy. In the word average are the letters RAGE, rage. We rage against average, which brings up a question that, we haven't talked about. We're getting near the end here, but what's in it for you? I mean, what's in it for the world is you use camp to build better people who practice saying, for example, positive things to themselves, or practice figuring out what materials you need or following directions and getting things for other people in the group. All of those things make people better friends and better people. How do you market that?
Yeah.
I think what you do is you look at your website. As soon as you're done listening to this, please have somebody look at your website with you looking over their shoulder and ask yourself, where is the why are we here question? I'm not going to tell you why you're running camp. That's not my business. But you know why you're running camp. Is the answer to that on the front page, the home page of your website? If it is, bonus points. If it isn't, opportunity. Because I'd like to know why you're running camp. And if the reason you're running camp is life-changing, would you please be proud of that? I always tell people, this is your home page. Be proud of your home.
Mhm.
Put on the home page not just the taglines. And I want to be sure I'm clear here. I'm not saying get rid of the taglines. Taglines are adventures in the outdoors. Taglines are exciting activities. Taglines are the things. Remember, I said fun is not the mission. That describes the environment of camp. All of that fun stuff. And keep the pictures up there of the kid going down the water slide or climbing, with a thumbs up, on the wall, or riding a horse or with mustard crusted around their mouth. But keep all of those pictures. But my question is, why are you running camp? What difference do you want to make in the world? And if you put that right up front in your website, parents will notice that. I'll give you just the easiest example of that. You have a million pictures. Some of them may be on your homepage of 2 kids hugging each other. This is the 2 friends beaming explosively picture, because parents look at that and say, oh, my kids will make friends. Wouldn't it be cool if next to that picture you said, click here to find out how we teach kids to make friends? It doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
Any high school student can tell you how to add that next to that picture. This is not a major website revamp. It just isn't. And when you click on it, it says, we at camp teach kids how to ask each other questions, how to show interest in each other. We play games in which they get to learn about each other. And those are the things that friends do. Now, compare that to a website. It's not a bad website that says friends for a lifetime. What I do is I look at that and I say, how? Prove it. What do you do at your camp to accomplish that? For example, when people say exciting outdoor adventures, I say, for what purpose? Again, it's not wrong that we say that, but what's the purpose of the adventures? If you say confidence, is there anything we can put in our communications to parents that show them how we make their kids more positive and more confident? One of the things you can tell them is that at many of our activities, we have them say something to themselves that's positive that we talked about before. And that's how we teach them to be positive people, by saying, I've got this, I can do this. And these are the things that we do that are different from other camps. And that's how, I don't know if you're familiar with the word fungible. It's Fungible. Until I got to law school, I'd never heard of it. Fungible means interchangeable. So a box of pencils are fungible goods. When your staff sit on benches or chairs, when they start training, those are fungible goods because nobody cares which one they got. I mean, if they're not broken, they're all basically the same. It doesn't matter which folding chair you're sitting in. Fungible, Fungible. At camp marketing, fungible is your enemy. I tell my clients there is no fun in fungible. What we need to do is to tell parents, when you send your kids to our camp, you're sending them at a camp that is running camp in order to make great people. Here are the qualities, 5 examples that we want to build in your kids. And here are some examples of our activities in which we do that. And if you ever have if you ever have the ability to get them to tour your camp, to get parents on site, instead of taking them to arts and crafts, please take them to arts and crafts and say, this is arts and crafts. We're very proud of this. We call it the arts and crafts barn. And this is where we do. And then what are you going to say? Are you going to say we do, and name the projects? Or are you going to say, this is where we teach people that things don't have to be perfect? Here's an example of how we do that. When we take people, including staff, on tours around our site, we want to let them know this is the purpose of this activity on the schedule.
So
Yep.
many good things. So many good takeaways. I like that.
Yeah, well, this last part, Michael, thank you so much because it just had us rethinking or examining our own approaches to the schedule, the time, the role that each of our staff play in coaching and youth development, and ultimately, I think how we can potentially, as camp operators, differentiate ourselves when parents are shopping around for our programs. And I'd like to think that the intentional approach of, the example of the photo of the 2 campers hugging for me is everything, right? Is how do we get here, or how do we create this, or how does this become a
Yeah,
thing in our
good.
program? Like, I
It's
think that really resonates with me, and I think that if a parent is looking at my website and seeing that, and I can explain it in a way that every parent wants their kid to learn those skills, and if we can articulate that, I think you've provided so much food for thought for operators moving forward, how even little tweaks to our marketing could make a massive difference.
Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the Intentional Campo called what I call Website Insight. You don't have to
Hmm.
make these things up for yourself. I actually give you the captions you can put on the picture. This doesn't take a lot of time. It's a way of communicating to people our excellence. I believe that camp's greatest contribution is that it can make positive changes in people that will last them a lifetime. And I think we undersell ourselves, and all the all the hard work that all of you do. I wish you took more credit for how wonderful your programs are. I wish, we did a better job, and we can. I've laid out how to do it. Communicate to parents what this is about and how kids will change from this. We shouldn't just claim it. It's not just confidence and self-esteem. We need to give them examples of how our program is designed to build confidence. And then if you say, well, is our program designed to do that? Well, that's what the last 20 chapters are. That's what the intentional question is. How can we use this activity to build confidence? What's a simple 30-second way we can use that activity in order to build respect? These are the ways that we can communicate that we're not just about recreation and we're not just about fun. We want to be able to say to parents at our camp, our campers don't just make friends, they learn how to make friends. And if that's accompanied by a great fun picture, that is a way of letting people know that this is the end. Now we've come full circle. That's why are we here? That's the reason we're running camp. And camp can change the world.
Positive changes in people that can last a lifetime. I like that, Michael. I like that.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, that's a great thing to end on. All right, Michael, we could talk to you forever, but we do need to wrap up at some point, and we do need to wrap up with our rapid fire questions. So, Michael Brandwein, are you ready?
Wait. What is rapid fire questions? Just a minute.
Okay. This is I'm not gonna say stolen. This is inspired by Brene Brown. So at the end of her podcast, her old podcast, she used to do rapid fire questions with her guests. So just off the cuff. So
all right, I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
First question.
Yes.
What is your favorite camp meal? So if you were going to go to a dining hall at a camp, what would be a favorite you had when you worked at camp?
Any kind of pasta. With sauce and things I can customize.
Okay.
Yes.
Number 2,
yes.
If you could lead any program area at a camp, what would it be?
Oh, I thought you said leave. Yeah, if I could lead, you mean other than magic, right? Because I did that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So let's just say magic. I think that would be the one.
Magic. Okay, I like it.
Yeah. Oh, either that or wrestling, because I think Howie, stop laughing. Don't laugh at the podcast guest.
I would not have pictured you.
No,
as
I never.
I'm digging it.
In a million years,
picture
wrestling would never.
No. That was the joke answer to the question. Yes. Okay. Keep going.
Now, I think you should have a singlet at your next presentation and just really surprise the crowd.
Okay.
All right. Next one. S'mores, burnt or golden brown?
Golden brown.
As I suspected. Michael, if you were a camper as a child, or you would have been a camper at summer camp, were you a homesick camper, or were you like a peace out parents, I'll see you in a week?
I never used the term homesick. I wish we would all stop using it. It is not a sickness. It misleads people. It makes it difficult to get rid of it. It makes it difficult to support children. And I wish people would stop using it. You can quote me. And that's a whole podcast that I would be very happy to talk about. When kids and staff think that it's something sick, like something you can catch, it's the entirely wrong direction to think about it. Homesick is you miss camp. Miss home. To a point. Well, but not just miss home. You miss home to a point where it gets in your way of enjoying the experience that you're at now. So it's excessive or to a point to missing home. If you don't missing home, there's something wrong with your home. If you send me to just one day of day camp where I'm going to be back in the afternoon and I don't miss my mom or my dog or my friends next door, there's something wrong with my life. So I'm sorry for pontificating about that. What was the other choice? The missing home? Or
yes.
I was fine missing home. But I was never, a peace out, because I think I would be in the middle there. I'm going to straddle your question.
No, but that's okay, because look at how we can grow from this episode. So what should I say to guests? Should I say, were they missing home as a camper, or were they like, see a parent?
Well, you can say, did you miss home to the point where it interfered with your enjoying camp? Or were you just fine not being at home and look at it as a vacation from that? My description is a few more words, which should surprise no one. But I think it's much more accurate, and it really, really helps people deal with the problem, because some kids miss home excessively, and we need to give them extra support. Of course we do. Adults who go away on vacation sometimes need that kind of support too, but they're not sick.
I like it.
Sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. You've influenced us. All right, Michael, as a camp professional, Would you be happiest in the office making all the wheels turn and on the phone and communicating, or would you be happiest out in the action with all the people?
Action.
Action. Okay, last one. What is your favorite camp song? Do you have one?
Boom, chicka boom.
I said, do you sing it like this? I said a
I said a
boom, chicka
boom,
Yeah,
boom.
chicka boom.
and the reason details
Boom, chicka
again.
boom.
Are guests allowed to give reasons? The
Yes.
reason I'm sure the whole point of this, everybody listening, is this is a 30-second segment at the end of the podcast. You ask Brandwein and you get lectures about homesickness.
Exactly.
The reason boom is a fabulous thing to do at camp, and it's my favorite, is because then individuals and groups can come up with new choruses for it. And they can share it with everyone. Whereas other camps, other songs that I love, you always sing them exactly the same way, and that's tradition, and it's excellent. But at an intentional camp, there should be songs where kids run up to the director every day and say, "I got a new one, Howie. How about low batteries?" I said a boom. And somebody says, "No, no, no, this one." And they make up new ones for Boom Chicka Boom. And then you say, "You thought of something that no one thought of before." Do you know what that's called? It starts with the letter C. It's creativity. When you make up
Mhm.
something that wasn't there before, that's the right side of that brain in your beautiful head. And that means you're creative. And I think we should try that at lunch when we sing it. Would you help me lead it? And that, my friends, is an intentional camp.
I love it. Thank you for those slow burn questions.
Yes, slow burn. I was
So,
just gonna say we just have to rename this every time Michael's on the show.
that's right. That's right. Exactly.
But thank you for all of that because you never lose an opportunity to teach and give some wisdom, and we're grateful for that. Michael, this has been incredibly special. Thank you for joining us and your insight. Before we get to closing out with some of the things you're up to in the next little bit, Kelly, a good friend, if people want to get a hold of you before the summer, because summer's going to be super busy, although I'm sure you wouldn't put down refuse a check-in if people need it. But Kelly, how can people get a hold of you?
The best way is probably with my email. So Kelly with a Y at hiddenpinesranch.com.
Amazing. If you want to get a hold of me, you can reach me at Howie at camprobinhood.ca. And for Michael's new book, The Intentional Camp, Putting More Muscle in the Mission of Character and Youth Development, is at michaelbrandwein.com/store. Please check it out. For any and all staff leadership training that you may be interested in having Michael at your camp, please check him out at mail@michaelbrandwein.com. And information about getting your leadership team trained. Michael is doing an upcoming live webinar
Yes.
in the month of May, and we
Yes.
encourage you to check that out at AC. Well, in the show notes, we're going to have all the details. But if you're interested in joining that webinar, please check the show notes. And of course, Michael's social media channels have become more active than ever. Congratulations, Michael. I
Thank you, Howie.
appreciate them very much. And so check them out on all social media channels. Michael, thank you so much. This is amazing. So much to take away from this amazing discussion. We really appreciate you.
Thank you. And appreciation goes out to all of you who are doing such amazing work that can change young people forever. So thank you for the hard work you do. And I wish you a safe and glorious, and if I may add, intentional summer.
Absolutely. I want to thank our sponsors, Camp Brain and Camptivities, for all their support in making this podcast happen. Please don't forget that you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. You can find the resources that we mentioned in this episode and lots of good stuff there from our show and other wonderful Go Camp Pro podcasts out there. We hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for listening, everyone. Kelly, thanks. We'll see you next time, everybody, on the Camp Owners Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Camp Owners Podcast. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on Apple Music or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, you can find our show notes at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. The Camp Owners Podcast is part of the Go Camp Pro Podcast Network. Find a podcast for camp pros of every age and stage at gocamp.pro/podcast. Hey Camp Pros, we love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, if you've gotten even one good idea from a Go Camp Pro podcast, a masterclass, from the Summer Camp Pros group on Facebook, at a conference, or wherever else, we ask that you give credit where credit is due. That way, we can encourage camp pros to keep freely sharing their brilliant ideas and make the camp industry better. Thanks very much.